don't think it's that
where
kind
that comes from, Will, is
Yeah.
in the noble varieties, there have
Yeah.
been, Zotz in particular, there was a 1-to-1 alpha beta ratio. So the breeders in the
Yeah.
Czech Republic still will tell you, right, we go for a 1-to-1 ratio, one part alpha, one part beta. But that's where that comes from. It's just kind of that's what Zotz, and Zotz has been a successful hop over several centuries, right? So they say this is what we're looking for. But as Matt was saying, now if you're trying to push the edge of the envelope a bit on that, and you start looking for different things, that's one of the things you don't have to be bound by a 1-to-1 alpha beta ratio, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, if you're not making a Czech pills, like if that's, beyond that, it's really never
exactly.
It's not been a factor for us that we really put too much emphasis on at all.
Mm-hmm.
We'll like, yeah, it's not something that we consider or look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To add to that,
I would say not many American brewers do.
No.
Yeah.
It's not a limitation we put on our beer, nor is it. I think that as I'm reading more research into what actually makes up beta acids and what they contribute, I think the understanding is still a little bit needing some more fleshing out as far as brewing results and what is provided and what does that perception lead, because I don't think it's uniform. It has a lot to do more with process. So if you're trying to look for a uniformity of what beta acids provide, it's really difficult in the U.S. because our brewing styles are very, very different from one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could putting too much emphasis on that could lead to some unnecessary decisions that, like, for instance, like co-cumulone, like there's
exactly that would be that,
it's the same thing.
Probably some great varieties were eliminated on that basis because people were stuck on a 1-to-1 ratio or a low co-cumulone, and
right.
Joey, like next week.
When you guys are doing those aroma tests, how are you? Are you making tinctures? Are you just doing rubs? Are you putting in alcohol, or what is?
We're doing rubs.
Rubs.
We're not doing anything other than aroma, rub and sniff. Basically, that's all we're doing, and we're working quite well for us. A lot of other breeders use chemical analysis. We're actually finding this.
Yeah.
I think and that was another question I had was, are you guys looking pretty directly at picking windows as well for these hops to find that optimal character for brewers in general? Because I know I've gone through so many iterations of Simcoe Citra Mosaic from different days, even Tettnang, Hallertauer, Zotz, Spot Select, they all have very different characters from a weak window picking. How does that factor into you guys' choices for making sure your growers are doing the same picking window, this kind of optimal position? I'm assuming you put it into a range and say, try to get it through at this time.
We've got a group of trusted growers who we work very closely with. There's about 5 or 6 growers that have got Harlequin at the moment, and those are the ones that are planting up this year. And we have about 3 meetings a year with those guys, and we share the information about how it's been grown. We've got one, Mark Andrews is our main guy who puts the seedlings onto his farm. We're going to spread that out to another couple of farms this year. But Mark will say, well, this is what I found with the hop. And the other growers will then add in and ask him questions about what we think and what's happened to it on their farm. So as more acreage becomes available, we're then comparing notes and working out which is the best time for picking. The main problem we have is the ones in the UK are all falling about the 3rd or 4th week in September. And again, we're looking for earlier ones over here. But when we grow the same sort of plant material in the US, they're very early. They're in actually 2nd and 3rd week of August because of the hotter climate they're maturing to. So I think we've got in the families we're focusing on, we've got quite a unique picking window, and we are trying to talk with the growers each year and discuss what they think is best. And that's really working quite well. As we grow, we will give more instructions to the growers and ask them to try and focus on particular areas where we think the variety is strong. And if you in the future do get batches which you think have worked particularly well, we can trace that back, look at the picking dates, and then try and sort of pass that back on to the growers as well. So again, it's all a teamwork type of thing, working out what works really well in the breweries, but also working on the farms as well. So all the feedback is great for us. That's why this is so important for us. We think this is
exactly, yeah. And I just add to that also we distribute the acreage out over different growers so they can optimize that picking window. So the hazard with a grower who's growing 600 acres of Amarillo, for instance, is that some of that's going to be picked early and some of it's going to be picked late. Whatever he may tell you, right? And yeah.
I think it's very interesting because we've, at least in the U.S., farmers that we've spoken to over the years in various roles I've had, has been talking about picking windows and kilning temperatures and kind of figuring out what retains those certain qualities in brewing that U.S. consumers are looking for. And I think it was amazing to do this beer with an English hop where the expectations of us were very coming into it, expecting a much more English character. And then as it comes around, it's just mind-blowingly more intense and fruity than anything that we've ever dealt with in the past.
Speaking of killing temperatures, did you? I'm just going to pull up the fermentation log you sent over. Do you feel like there was some hop creep with this hop? Because you guys did two dry hops with it.
Mm-hmm.
And did that first dry hop, what day was that? Was that mid fermentation when that went in?
Yeah, it was day 2. So it was literally, okay. We saw such a big drop in gravity from basically the first day of fermentation to the second that we were planning on day 3, but when we saw that drop, we immediately moved to just doing it on day 2. So we had that mid fermentation load of about 1 pound per barrel, and then we were pretty much at terminal by day 3, and you can see it repeat there twice. And that was before we added the hops again. Now we didn't actually measure the hop creep on this one from overall end of fermentation because we were basically assuming that we had hit terminal, repeated, and called it. We didn't really track it to get another gravity much later after the second charge of dry hopping to see if we had dropped down a little bit more. But again, we generally don't see more than about 0.2 for anything we do. So it's potentially there, but because we weren't diacetyl arresting or anything, we weren't really monitoring the actual gravity drop as we went forward.
Do you know what temperature Mark would have dried those at? Do you know what temperature Mark would have dried those hops at? 60 degrees centigrade.
That would be 60, yeah.
Yeah.
Around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys lowered that over the years? I mean, what would that?
There's been a lot of work done. And actually, at the recent hop convention in Portland, there was a paper that was given on that topic, and the results are a bit ambiguous, frankly. That lower kilning temperature, it's not just temperature; it's bed depth and it's depth and airflow as well, and it's not that conclusive that we're getting fantastically new. I think the factor that I pay a lot of attention to is both training and then harvest window, as Matt was referring to. I think that has a tremendous effect on the quality. We know scientifically that as the hops sit in the field longer, the oils mature the latest. So you'll have a beta peak, and then you'll have an alpha peak for that variety, and you'll have an oil peak at some point after that, right? And if you're looking for oil, usually that harvest window comes sometime after that alpha peak. And how you judge that in the field, whether it's dry matter or finger feel, or mostly the growers have a good sense of that. But that peak time is at least as important as the kilning temperature. Would be my assessment based on everything I've seen on that subject. It got a lot of play a few years ago. And I think, as brewers became more focused on aroma varieties, the thought was, boy, we're blowing all this
right.
Oil up through the stack, right? And it's actually, it's mostly myrcene, which is the most volatile of the oils, right? I just haven't seen anything that showed that. But I'd be interested if you had a different experience on that. We just haven't really seen much effect from going from, and basically the range, I should say, has kind of between 120 and 140 degrees
Yeah.
Fahrenheit. So that's about what they're varying the temperature on.
Right.
It
The guys on
saps the capacity of the kilns, because, you know, then you got
Right.
it sitting there instead of 8 hours, and overnight, you know, you got it sitting there for 12 hours. So it has capacity implications for the kiln as well.
I think on those hop research figures as well, Charlie, they were saying about the higher kilning temperatures were reducing the enzymes in the hops, and so you weren't getting so much hop creep. Which
Again, that's interesting.
I think that point.
Yeah.
I think that so a lot of American brewers are complaining that, hey, you have all these beautiful hops and you're kilning them too high, I guess, and you're blowing off these oils, aromas. Can we lower what would happen if we lower the kilning temperatures, and then all of a sudden we're not denaturing these enzymes, and then now we all of a sudden have hop creep, which was not a problem like 5-10 years ago. I don't think now it's a problem. Not necessarily a problem, but it's something to contend with and adjust with the recipe. And I think that, you know, the IPA that would have normally taken like 10 days, 12 days is now taking like 14 days.
I think this is the lower temperatures.
So yeah,
okay.
I'm just curious if that is something that if that 6 degrees Celsius is something that has that been standard for a while? Have you adjusted your kilning temperatures at all?
I think they've been standard in the UK hops for some time. We haven't really adjusted them. I think it's come from the US. That down to 125 has been driven by the US market.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think it has started to sort of affect the hop creep. People have started to experience this hop creep, which was never happening when they were kilning at slightly higher temperatures. But the other part of that trial also was pointing out that the flavor profiles weren't changing that much. So I think it was Simcoe and there's one other variety. I think it was maybe Cascade. But they were trialing those varieties, and when they tested the two beers with the different kilned temperature hops, they were finding that the flavors were very similar, but they were getting more hop creep in the samples which had a lower temperature. Yeah.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden it throws the beer out of whack, because you're a lot drier and it's a lot more bitter. So it's already gonna affect the way it tastes. So
I think that's really interesting to bring up too, bro, because I think we adjust as brewers personally for that ahead of time. We expect a lower terminal gravity, and we use alpha-acetylactic decarboxylase to prevent diacetyl production later in the process, and it's seen awesome results of just getting no diacetyl, even from diacetyl growing English strains of yeast. Lager strains we use it on, and there is literally nothing at the end of fermentation for us to even monitor as far as diacetyl goes. So eliminate that factor, but if you're canning it super fast and it's still fermenting a little bit, that does cause a major issue. We just haven't got into that ourselves.
I think we've still got the report, haven't we, from when we were in Portland? We could probably send you the experiment and the survey that was talking about kilning temperatures.
I'll do that.
Yeah,
super interested.
I can get that report. Yeah,
you've got that, Charlie. Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, and but to go back to the hop, how many pounds of Harlequin are you guys making, you think, now, or have been planted, or will be produced this year or next year?
Or how many can we get?
How many? Yeah, it's probably.
There was 1 ton last year, roughly 1 ton. So what's that, 2,200 pounds? So it's very new. Peter, what did we say this year? 4 ton. Peter, you still there? 4 tons. 4 tons this year, we think, is coming. So it's 8,000 pounds, 8,800 pounds this year. And then the question for us is how much we ramp that up by. We've got a lot of growers here who want to plant it. We don't want to go and plant a load and then find 2 years' time we're getting the guys to take it out. But feedback like this is really important for us. We're going to take it steadily, but if we feel that people want more, there's more that can be planted. So you'll have to let us know on that one if you do need a bit more.
I think, and I think one of your questions, whether this could be, I think this certainly could be, does it need support or something like that? We usually built just for hop complexity and a nice character to put in other hops. But I think that I could totally see this being a lead hop you know,
That's
so,
really interesting. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, if we built in, and I think if we put in a little bit of American hops as a supporter, you know, but if this was like a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, something like that, and the dry hop or in favor of Harlequin, that might be really interesting to experiment with. So I thought it was a really fun, cool hop.
Awesome.
But
yeah, that's a really good point. We think that, well, personally, I think a lot of the best beers are blends. You know, you do have the single hops occasionally that stand out, but blending them is a key. And I think this is where we'll learn more. As more gets into the market, we'll learn a lot more about how it works. Peter's just saying Harlequin doesn't have any negative connotations in the US in terms of its name, does it?
No, I don't think so. There's the that.
No one knows what it means, Peter, but there's no negative connotations at all.
Yeah.
What were you going to say there, Will?
Well, there's that comic, like the Joker and Batman series. It's like
Quinn.
Yeah. So, but I don't think there's anything.
I mean, you couldn't have timed it better because I think there's a bunch of movies that are including Harley Quinn now as its own character.
Right,
so,
no
yeah,
kidding.
play off of that. Yeah, play off of that. Yeah.
Peter's just saying, should we call the daughter of Harlequin the Harbinger of Doom?
No, not this year. Not this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, give it 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Don't also call it an alien invasion or anything like that. So just
okay, we'll avoid that.
Anything. Yeah.
Well,
I'm knock on some wood here.
Meeting. I mean, we're really pleased that you guys have taken time to brew the beer for us.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Sorry we couldn't get over to CBC this year. I was really looking
us too.
Out there, that would have been fantastic. But no, we really appreciate the work you've done on it, and we'll be very keen to find out how it develops, and also if we can do other things with you as well, which would be fantastic.
I think that's a good thing to point out, and Will as well. We'd love to continue working with you guys, obviously, since you're now in one of the neighbors. But I think the science portion of what we can help drive here would be really interesting to start getting more detail on Harlequin specific, if nothing else, to kind of what we're hearing from what's being developed for specific indicators in the industry of what makes a really good aromatic hop for brewing. I think that's the thing that's always been left out is brewing trials basically tell the difference. I mean, you can have a hop that looks great data-wise, but if it doesn't brew well, you're going to have a harder time selling it. And this one, I mean, Harlequin plays extremely well into a lot of key indicators of that this is a great brewing hop. We can do something really interesting and track it and make sure we're getting good data off of it. So.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. No, any help you can give us on that would be very much appreciated. We're very excited by it. We've been very excited since 2007, and now it's taken a while to get a bit more momentum behind it. But I think the next 3 or 4 years, we've got some good things coming through the program. And what's really interesting would be to see how far we can go with it, because we just don't quite know what the next step and the next step and the next step are yet, and whether we can actually go further. So that'd be really cool if we can get you guys try some of those varieties as well.
I mean, I was going to say to some of your questions, we've used Olicana. We were really excited about Olicana when we saw the descriptors, and Godiva, Jester, and Mystic now we've used as well. And Harlequin just stands above. I mean, in so many different ways. It's extremely unique comparatively. So, and we geared our heads with those varieties towards English styles because obviously that's where we want to play. And I think what we keep running into is this black currant character that most of these new developments come through with. And it does blend well for English styles, but when you're trying to get an American style, it has to be something much more pineapple, much more fruit forward, stone fruits even, or passion fruit. It makes such a big difference in what people recognize as an IPA, not necessarily something that's still English.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's good. That's good advice. With the Jester, we've tried to see if it'll work also as a Type 45 pellet. So as a cryo type pellet, it's not exactly the cryo YCA type pellet, and we're just getting some of that in at the moment. So we'll try and get some of that over to Chris have a look at as well, and if you guys are interested in trying that. But we're trying to develop that fruit character and remove some of the herbal characters, perhaps at the polyphenols and grass. Peter's just telling me.
Yeah.
That's what thank you.
Yeah. And I think it's to our market, and I know, Will, you're probably going to see some of this too. We try really hard to do traditional English styles, but our consumer base is such that it is so dependent now on hop-forward IPAs, and then also for Austin especially, it's German and Czech styles, because that's where our heritage is as a settled place, So it's interesting to breaks my heart to give them a fantastic bitter and then see that bitter hang around for months on end because no one's drinking it besides us, and it's like, come on, can we just appreciate them as much as we do?
What's really interesting in that is also changing in the UK here now. We're finding that a lot of our traditional beer styles are losing favor, and those fruity, more intense characteristics from the US hops are taking over. Some of this, I went out with a group of hop growers before lockdown a few months ago, and I had a real job trying to persuade them to drink a good English bitter, because there were beers there with American and Slovenian hops in, which had a lot more character, fruity character, and so I think that is just a taste thing. People are moving on to that all over the world, I think, with these new flavors. And hence why we sort of started the program, I guess, really as well, just to try and develop those varieties. Peter saying hops are an acquired taste, and we move on and develop our flavors. So we had one that tasted very much like Marmite, didn't we, Peter? Do you know?
I love Marmite.
What Marmite is? Did anybody know what Marmite is?
Yeah.
We sniffed it. It was like a yeast extract, and we thought, wow, that's not going to work at all. But these are the sort of things that come up occasionally in the program. That's something that you just think, wow, that's weird. And
Paul, ask Peter if they have one that smells like peanut butter. It'll way better here.
Yeah, pastry stouts would be filling those up right away.
Work on it immediately, Charlie.
Screw the Marmite. Let's get some peanut butter hops. Right?
You get some peanut butter, maybe some raspberry jam and some vanilla in there, and you've got yourself a winner.
Now.
And it's fascinating to see the flavors that are coming out in hops now from all over the breeding programs. I mean, we are talking about flavors like ashiness or earthiness to a higher degree, but then you have cocoa and vanilla and these different dark fruits that the hops are touching on. And it's very interesting that every grower is trying to find that unique change, but pineapple and passion fruit are still kind of the winners that everyone's gravitating towards.
How do you guys feel about coconut?
I think it's interesting. There's getting more and more varieties out there, but I almost feel like I have to direct my head whenever I see a hop that says coconut to something like a pale or IPA to be a builder of this tropical, like a super tropical kind of character. But then you have one and you have to hit all the other rounds. And the other place it plays is in a stout, maybe for barrel aging, where you can use. But in those kind of beers, you're not using a ton of hops, honestly. So this tropical IPA, and Will, you can totally jump in too on this, is I've seen it play a lot of places. They have one brand, but it's that character that they keep separate, and then the rest is a much more traditional like IPA character.
Interesting.
Yeah. With hops that can go towards coconut, I try to be very careful with that because they can become suntan lotion pretty quickly, and so if a hop is like, I'm trying to think, like Sabro maybe was a good example. Like I don't know that would be a lead hop. That might be a supporting hop to help with that tropical character you're trying to go for. But or if you're doing you're already getting some coconut from a barrel aged stout or something like that, you want to blend in a little bit of something like that. But I like coconut, but I'm a little wary about hops that are too intense. Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks, guys. That's good information.
Yeah, I think it to me it usually comes along with some sort of barrel aged character as well, which makes it unique to be able to kind of amplify barrel aging in anything you're doing where you're trying to pull some vanilla out. But IPAs, I think we've done it a few times on some very tropical iterations of a hazy, and we have to be very careful we're not getting into that Banana Republic style flavor, or banana boat. It just can turn that way very quickly.
Yep.
Well, interesting stuff. Very good. Very good. Well, I think we've learned a lot today. Thank you ever so much.
Likewise.
It's so exciting for us to be able to pick up on all your information and pass it back to Peter as well. The guy who's doing all the work at the coalface.
I mean, let's
speak to us.
We'd love to keep working on it. I mean, I think this is just one beer in a line that we kind of are trying to get our heads wrapped around of how we use this hop going forward, and we'd like to. I mean, it has totally. What I love about some of the varieties we got to play with for CBC this year were some were continental varieties, and of course Harlequin, that are just totally different than what you imagine is available in those realms. So it's like, this is something I think U.S. brewers will be really interested in if we can just keep kind of pushing it in the right way and making sure people get to try it.
What minimum quantity do you guys need for trial brews?
So I think in this one in particular, we used a total of 50 pounds for this specific brew. And that was a 10-barrel batch. And our trial brews are 10 barrels. We just go wholeheartedly in. So in that realm, if we were going to get some, we'd probably get 66 pounds as a whole, or somewhere in that range again, to make sure that we can do one and kind of keep sourcing it from there. If we were doing like a full-year contract with it, we'd probably get 88 to 120-ish, somewhere around that range, to make sure we have it.
And we have a 15-barrel system, so that would probably just inch up a little bit. So.
Okay, it's just I think Peter's thinking about what, because on our very small, so single hill plots, we'll just get a few grams and ounces out of that. And then as we take the trials a bit higher, we then have got not named but numbered varieties, which we're also looking for people to have a go with as well. So, but of course, I think the other thing that we've got to take into consideration is that you guys will probably need pellets, and we tend to normally want about 600 kilos, about 1,200 pounds before we start pelleting. Just the nature of our pelleting facility. Yeah, but certainly bear it in mind as well on some of the newer stuff when it starts to come through as well.
Okay, I would love that. Yeah,
100%. I missed the days where my system was well able to handle whole leaf hops, but these days on what I'm on, it does not go well.
And Will, real quick, when are you guys going to be up and running? Do you guys have your projected open date right now?
I think we'll probably hopefully be brewing in July. But I think that our tap room will open up hopefully by Labor Day is our target.
Oh, okay.
So
excellent.
We were originally actually shooting for this weekend, way back when. But we got so it's all right. We're just trying to monitor the situation just like everybody else, and but the construction was delayed, but is moving forward, but hopefully we'll finish it out this summer and then be open by the late summer, early fall.
Okay, excellent.
Good luck with that. That's good.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's been a wild ride for everybody. So.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I couldn't even.
Difficult times. Desperate measures.
Desperate measures. That's right.
So clever.
I'm on point with the